Welcome back to this week's edition of Mystery Wine Blind Tasting. Who's with us? I know there's a number of you who are probably already wine in glass, halfway to an assumption on what this wine is, and ready to go. So who's ready to join in? I'm going to pour a little taste for myself as those of you that are already here start to chime in. Hey, how are you? Isabel, great to have you here. I don't have a clue. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us, man. Great to have you with us. It's awesome, as always, to see you week to week virtually. Susan's with us. Kimberly, nice. Leon, Kim, good. I'm so glad you guys are all back this way. This is a white week. We'll see. I don't know. It's going to be... See what this one brings us. Jan's here, Rick's here, Melanie's here. Hi, Tran. Kelly and Jeff and Kristen, the Sanders are with us. Oh, that's awesome. And Klaus, hey man, how are you doing, Klaus? The Knobs are with us. Stephen, hello to you as he says hello to all, which is awesome. Good. Kathy's with us. Kathy aced the last wine all the way down to the actual producer last week. And I think she got the one before that too, but not necessarily the producer. So she's our super ringer, which is awesome. And Rich took care of opening her wine for her, which is good. As a good husband should, right? Erica, hi, how are you? Ken Jennings. We're rejoined by Kathy, the Ken Jennings of our group. Her last week's winnings included. Hey, Jan. Jan's here and Katie's here, or Kate's here rather. The Robins are with us. Good. Okay, we've got a good crew. All right, so you've got your wines open. Wines in glass. If not, go ahead. Let's start to work our way through this little guy. I don't even off the bat right away. It looks like not necessarily a little guy. It looks like it has some density and some weight to it, but I'm getting a touch ahead of myself. Is it clear or hazy? Is it a pale and medium or deep kind of appearance? Does it have sort of a lemon, gold, or amber color to it? Where are we at here? Hey, Barry. And the Haynes are with us. That's great. This is showing a little bit more gold in color to me. Yeah, definitely a little richer than, say, the last white wine that we had that was from Suave. This is clear, and I would say a kind of a medium intensity. It's not pale. It's not super deep, but it has sort of a medium, maybe even medium plus, depending on how you argue it. I have a sort of amber colored table, so it's kind of, I think, throwing that off a touch. But if I go over white, yeah, it's more medium. And over white, yeah, I should do that really, huh? So use a white page or use something to kind of get a sense of that. It's a little bit paler than I initially thought looking over the other surface here at the table. So pale to medium, lemony gold. There's a little bit of gold tone I kind of see on the outside edge here. So as I'm looking down, there's sort of a gold cast. And right in the center too, there's a little bit of that. But otherwise, it's kind of a little lemon quality too. Yep, Kathy's calling it medium gold. Clear golden yellow from Jan. We got clear, medium gold. Yeah, it looks like it's not a light wine, right? So if we were talking about, say, stainless steel Sauvignon Blanc, it might have a greenish tinge. It'd be paler colored. It would be something that would be a bit more watery in appearance. So this gives us an indication that it's probably not that. Again, we don't want to rush to a decision right off the bat, but right off from our first initial impressions, we're getting a sense of where we might go. So, cool. All right, on the nose, is it clean? Yep, I think it's pretty clean. Is it pronounced? Something jumping out of the glass at you? Is it really easy to understand the first aromatic profile? First, second, third of them? Are there multiples of different aromas that are coming out of the glass? Or is it a little bit more muted? I'm going to kind of warm mine up a little bit. Temperature matters when you're smelling something. So when something's colder, it's not quite as expressive from an aromatic perspective. So the warmer you get something, if you think about taking a sauce that you've made and putting it in the refrigerator and taking it out of the refrigerator and smelling it versus smelling it after you put it on the stove and heated it up. The aroma fills the room, fills the house when you're making that sauce over the stove, not so much when it's in the refrigerator. So as it gets warmer, you're going to get a bit more aroma. And so I need to let this warm up just a touch. For Matthew, not a lot on the nose, but some lemon. Cool. It's pretty faint, Isabel's pointing out. Jan's getting some of that lemon too. Kimberly's noting a little green apple. Lemon and green apple, good. Yeah, it's a little bit restrained, huh? So lemon and green apple. The only thing that green apple kind of oftentimes pins for me right off the bat is maybe Chablis. So Chardonnay from the northern part of Burgundy. We've got a light sweet green apple Jolly Rancher. Ooh, cool. I like that descriptor. Citrus zest, lemon and blossom. And Isabel, no, you should not heat the wine. Just let it kind of be a little warmer. If it's coming straight out of like your refrigerator, that's pretty cold. And so it might be a little bit harder to perceive the aroma. But we can also work it around a little bit. You can see me using my 98 degrees that are in my hands to try to warm this a touch. And swirling it also helps. Green apple and honey from Erica, yeah. And Drew most likely there as well. Brian's picking up some sweet tarts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the candied element, the orchard fruit, citrus, rocks, white pepper from Kathy. Yeah, I think that's good. Melanie's picking up some honey, which is interesting. If we start to bring in that honeyed element, we could be talking about Chenin Blanc, right? And that lemon element, but not so much the green apple. The apple usually would be a little bit riper. So still puzzling where we might be going on this. I don't think anything's giving me a direction that's really specific just yet. Remember when we had Riesling and it was like, oh, it smells like Riesling. The petrol element was there. There were some identifiers that really took us to a specific place, or at least a specific varietal that then took us to a series of places that we could kind of dwindle down. I'm not getting that experience right off the bat with this particular wine. So Jan's picking up some apple. Jen's got some apple and citrus. Yeah, apple's here. So cool. Chalk and minerality on the back, citrus oils overall. That chalky minerality and the subdued sort of profile does kind of reflect Chablis. So I think I might be going back on my statement just even a moment ago of not necessarily having a place to consider, but taking my way into that. Robert's throwing out Gruner. Yeah, and I like that. The mineral profile. That white pepper element usually you find. Sometimes you find sort of a radish. And power suggestion now kind of ruins all that, but a little lime from the Swanbergs. Yeah, touch waxy from Melanie. Let's head into the taste and see what we can verify from the aroma. Candy's throwing out Riesling too, yeah. Maybe that honeyed element, some of that minerality for sure. The apple stuff I'm not so sure about, but it seems a bit dark for Chablis. Barry's note is there. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Chablis seems to be getting a little bit riper, and some of the stuff I think is Chablis is not, and is actually New World. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know yet. But I would consider it based on our descriptions from the start. Kathy's leaning toward Gruner because of the green beans and some white pepper. Matthew's noting Pinot Gris. And Pinot Gris is an interesting idea here too. I think Pinot Blanc could be thrown in the conversation too with respect to the lemon and some of that minerality. And we could be talking Pinot Blanc from Northern Italy. We could be talking Pinot Blanc from Alsace. Also Pinot Gris, Matthew, maybe we're talking Pinot Gris from Alsace, which would give us a little bit more texture. And yeah, we're already getting a bunch of ideas here. A little tart on the end. And Eileen, you're replying to Kathy about Gruner. So yes, the little tartness on the end from Jan, a little bit bitter, so phenolic quality. Strong mid-palate flavors from Barry. Barry, what are you picking up? Lemon wet white pepper from Susan. Cool. So that could be Gruner. Cool. It's dry or off dry? Hmm. A big hello to you girls. My daughters Ada and Fia are on vacation, hijacking their auntie's Facebook account to say hello. Hello, girls. I miss you too. Look forward to seeing you soon. Rick's throwing Pinot Blanc from Alsace, which I like that idea. Carrie is saying it's heavy, not totally dry, right? There's a little bit of that textural quality on this that has, like, it's almost not off dry, as Matthew's noting. Like, Matthew, it's like it's off dry, but not, like, there is residual, right? But not quite fully that way. And Jen just asked about Gruner Veltliner having an effervescence, and no, not necessarily. You can find some sect or sparkling Gruner Veltliner occasionally, but most of the time you're going to find it dry without any effervescence whatsoever. So Gruner is in the running too. Although generally speaking, Austrian Gruner Veltliner would be dry. So this little bit of off dryness that we're kind of flirting with. Some of us are saying dry, a little bit alky from berry, which means a little bit more alcohol, which could give you that perception of sweetness. And that's where this is tricky. So alcohol is derived from sugar, from potential sweetness. And so sometimes a higher alcohol gives you the perception of sweetness, although it's not there. And that's what we have to suss out on this one. And you figure out dryness, generally speaking, on the back end of the experience. So swallow a little bit and then wait for the taste to linger. And if you're getting some residual, if you're getting some sweetness on your palate, and it's not just the alcohol, then you have some off dryness potentially. If it's really dry and there's none of that left, then you have a clue that you might not be in a residual place. Brian's thrown out some Semillon. That's another thing we can consider for sure. Karen's thrown out less than 1%. Yeah, I think there's maybe a little bit here, but I don't think it's intentionally off dry. So like, I don't think they're trying to make an off dry style, which to the earlier points about Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris from Alsace, you could have a little residual sugar. And that residual sugar gives you body, gives you unctuousness, gives you weight, which I think is an appropriate call for a wine like this. There is alcohol for sure. And I'm now quoting you, Matthew, excuse me. Alcohol is there. Rick Tagg is also knowing there's some fat alcohol that's throwing him off. It's in that realm, and that happens oftentimes for me in Alsace. And Chris is noting that it's very tasty with al pastor tacos, which I would agree 100% would be fantastic right now. We would crush a bunch of al pastor tacos if they were in front of us. Candy's kind of prompting us right now in terms of the question of old world and new world. Obviously, my last few comments are about old world. I don't see this necessarily being new world. What do you guys think? Jim, you're saying it's too much alcohol, too much mouthfeel and lack of mineral for Gruner or Alsace. So I think you can find some great calcareous, chalky soils in Alsace and get some of that mineral quality. Barry's noting that there's a high alcohol content, nothing that necessarily indicates an arresting of the fermentation. But you could also just arrive at sort of a fermentation that's higher alcohol and the yeast die out and you have a little bit of residual sugar in that potential. Isabel asked about peak pool. Peak pool I think would be a little bit lighter, brighter, not quite the same roundness, generally speaking. So I think we're kind of in that realm of old world with more textured wine rather than say peak pool. Peak pool fits in the old world category, but not quite the same texture. But everybody seems to be chiming in on old world, which is kind of cool. So let's talk a little bit about this again. When you taste this, are we going to be able to verify the lime, lemon, white pepper, there's a little bit of green beans, Kathy noted, I think. Citrus, is it as expressive on the palate or as minimally expressive as it was on the nose? Is it more expressive? What are you picking up flavor-wise on the palate here? Any flavors that are coming out for you? Is that citrus still there? Lemon? There's a slight like almond skin nuttiness to me. That's just beneath the citrus. There's a little bit of a spice note. Brian and the knobs are noting a little bit more floral herbal notes in addition to that mineral, some white pepper and lemon zest. It is getting a little bit more expressive as it's opening up. Susan's finding it a little bit light on the palate. I'm a touch higher than you, Susan. I'm going to put it more in the medium realm on the palate. So let's, yeah, it's got a little more texture to it. Lemon from Matthew, mineral from Jan, lemon for sure, some chalkiness, some pear. Carrie's noting chalk in both smell and taste. I think that's a case, so we got to consider that, right? So a chalky soil from Chablis, a chalky soil from somewhere in Alsace, a more chalky element from maybe northern Italy. Where else would we consider? And as we're doing that, we should work our way through it, right? It's dry to off-dry, it's sort of flirting in between. I don't know that we can classify this as an off-dry wine, but it has some potential residual sugar, 1% or so, maybe less. Acidity is where? Where do you put the acidity? Brian, thank you quick for the response. Medium. It's medium on the palate and still, it's got a medium weight, medium density, right? So this is more like 2% as opposed to skim milk, and it's definitely, I don't think, fully whole milk, but it's got a little texture to it, right? Chris, you're picking up a little sage. You don't think they put a little sage in those tacos? Are you really a good judge at this point? And Jan, you're quite correct. This is a great cheese wine. Cheese wines need a little acid, don't oftentimes need the tannin that you find in red wine where most people pair it with cheese. White wines are the best general pairing for the spectrum of cheese, especially fresh cheeses or cheeses that have a little bit of runniness to them. They get that runniness by way of water, not necessarily by way of fat. And so you don't want something that is super tannic, and this would be beautiful with that. Dried apricots coming from Christina, that's cool. Karen's noting a medium body. How about the finish? Is this a really quality wine? Does it have a long finish? Yeah, the chalk's there. Citrus. It's really that for me. It's the citrus and the chalkiness, and there's a little bit of a nuttiness, but not a lot more, right? So in that context, would we consider a blend, or this is single varietal? And I think because it kind of has that persistence of a profile and it's relatively narrow in focus, I would not look, generally speaking, toward a blend. I would be probably more comfortable with a single varietal. And Sancerre was thrown out, and Candy just threw out Sauvignon Blanc. I don't know that Sauvignon Blanc, the lemon would be more limey, I think. It could be. I mean, it could be a very ripe Sancerre, for example. All that minerality, we should consider that chalkiness coming from Sancerre. Gosh, if that's Sancerre, it's usually a little more lime, but I could be very wrong there. That would be interesting. Barry's offering up a 47 Cheval Blanc. That's all I saw, Barry. The rest of your message is kind of is blurred. You're just going to give me a bottle of 47 Cheval Blanc, and that's what I'm going to go with. If there's 1% more residual sugar, that's actually showing up. Oh, and you just noted that you're just kidding on the Cheval. So what a tease. Gewürztraminer, Kristen. Rose, spice, a little more aromatic quality would be more in the realm of Gewürz. And so I don't think so as much. So some of you think I'm kind of stuck on that residual element. Some of you are with me on that. And Rick's noting never consider chalk as a tasting element, now can't get past it. Yeah. So chalky can refer to chalk like you're out there on detention banging the chalk erasers, but it also can kind of be like a a crushed stone quality to it that I think you find in certain soil types, and those soil types are in Bath, England, and they run across the Channel and they cut across France through Chablis and Champagne and into other spots that I think you should consider. So we should consider Sancerre, we should consider Alsace, we should consider northern Italy perhaps, and maybe we should then head into Austria and consider Gruner Veltliner or Riesling from there perhaps, and then work our way through each of those options. Chenin Blanc was tossed out there as well. We touched on that in the beginning just a little bit. I don't know that you'd get the lemon. I think we'd get higher acid, and the texture's right, the color's right. We could be there. The minerality I don't usually get about that as much. I don't know that. I don't know if we have enough acid. If we don't have enough, and the minerality is not necessarily something I would pick out particularly for that. But I also think we might get apple in the way of we'd get apple in the way of kind of more ripe apple, red apple, cooked apple for Chenin Blanc, and so I'm not as keen on Chenin Blanc. I could be swayed and I could be wrong, but we can talk about Semillon too by way of Melanie. Yeah, Semillon. I think single varietal Semillon you find from South America. You find a blend of Semillon, oftentimes with Sauvignon Blanc and more wood profile, generally speaking, from Bordeaux. And I'm not getting as much of that Sauvignon Blanc kind of brightness here. Texturally, I think it has Semillon potential. Semillon gives you a waxiness, and I'm not getting the waxiness that would be on Chenin or on Semillon from this. I just get kind of a rounder quality that seems more alcohol derived and probably a little less than 1% of residual sugar. Barry, even though I would be delighted to take that 47 Cheval off your hands. And no, I'm not. Melanie noted something about Riesling, and Karen's noting back that's not the usual Riesling notes, and I agree with that. And Jeff, that's a really good question. I wanted to bring that back, and I forgot about it from the beginning. What about Viognier? Are we getting enough aromatics off of this? That honeyed note that we talked about in the beginning with the lemon was like, oh, okay. And then there's a little bit of dried apricot someone found, so could this be Viognier? Viognier doesn't have a high acidity, has a nice texture. It could be. I'm not getting the aromatic punch that I would normally get from Viognier. I could be wrong about that, but it's not expressive in the way of sort of a blossom quality, and the honey element is there, but not for me. It's not super strong. Kate, Vernaccia di San Gimignano. That's an interesting question. I don't know. I don't know enough about that varietal. I've tasted it once or twice, and I don't have kind of a taste memory of that particular varietal. If it is that varietal, you get 100% credit. Barry, yeah, that's an interesting point on Grenache Blanc. Could be high alcohol from Grenache Blanc for sure. Garnacha Blanca from Spain, lemon and chalky, that could be there. But then I would think we would expect to find something kind of blended. And this doesn't seem blended to me, but I could be completely wrong about that. Karen's noting a little bit more of a Comtal Creme style warm year Gruner, which I think there's a potential for that too. That lime, lemon, the minerality for sure. So I think if we're kind of starting to zero in on something, maybe it's Gruner from Austria. We're talking about Chablis. We're talking about Alsace Pinot Blanc, Alto Adige Northern Italian Pinot Blanc, Pinot Bianco. Maybe we're talking about Spanish Garnacha Blanca. And Chris, you're finding pineapple notes and habanero salsa. Yeah, your palate's fried this week, but you can keep playing along if you like. And Barry's noting like a high percentage Garnacha Blanca, which is, yeah, there's a creaminess, Jan. I think there's a mid palate creaminess that's there. Karen is Jan, you're agreeing with Karen on the Riesling part, perhaps, and the Swanbergs are throwing out Gruner. So like Gruner oftentimes is like a little bit of a radish element, turnipy element, and white pepper. Is that what you're getting? Anybody getting that from this? I remember tasting a couple months ago, and it just the lemon element just was a signature for me for Pinot Blanc, and that's kind of where I'm stuck. So, and I like the textural quality that you could find from sort of Alsace Pinot Blanc on this, but and Erica's chiming in with the bottle shape. I was just thinking that. I don't have the bottle in front of me. I have this. The bottle shape tells you a lot. It's a tall bottle, very slender. You're looking at a potential Alsatian bottle. Tall bottle, very slender, though, also could mean Gruner from Austria. So it doesn't rule out either one there. So I don't have the bottle, but yeah, you can absolutely learn a lot of things about a wine by way of the bottle if you have that in front of you. So if you have a sloped shoulder, it's a so-called Burgundy bottle. If you have a broad-shouldered bottle that kind of runs down like that, it's a Bordeaux-styled bottle. You have a traditional kind of Riesling bottle, which is long and slender, that you'd find in both Germany, Austria, Alsace. So those things can kind of tip you off in one direction or other. There are anomalies within all of that, but you can use that to help you reference and then leverage what you are finding by way of the aroma and the taste. Kathy saying the bottle shape did help, just saying. So that's where you're going to Gruner. And if you're playing at home with friends or at some point and they don't cover the capsule, if there's a red and white stripe on it, then you know for sure you're in Austria. But we covered the capsule, I think. And so if you looked already, you cheated. Yeah, it is getting a little more aromatic. It's getting a little bit more savory. Yeah. Wow, it just kind of got porky and stewed meat. Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I don't. So I'm gonna be able to say I don't think this is Chablis. Like I don't think that's where we're at. I'm not comfortable saying this is Sancerre. I could be wrong. It'd be really ripe style in Sancerre. And Rick's calling Kathy out saying that Richard opened the bottle, so how come she's looking at the bottle? And Susan saying a Federspiel Gruner from Austria. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I was up to this point like pretty comfortable. I was going to go Pinot Blanc Alsace, and that second pour, this is in a savory note. I'm getting some of that spicy radish. So I think I'm headed back to Austria to Gruner Veltliner. I like that. I like that call. And Federspiel, for those of you who don't know, Susan threw out a really cool term. In the Wachau, they rank their wines based on ripeness. And so Federspiel, if I remember right, and Klaus, you're on this chat, you can definitely chime in, please, and correct me, and all of you studying for degrees. But Federspiel is, 10.5 to kind of 12% alcohol. And Schmaragd, named after the cute little lizard that runs along the rocks that make up these terraces that are a beautiful sequence to create vineyards on the riverbank there, is more like 12% plus. And so if you think about that in the context of ripeness, we're talking about something that has a bit more alcohol. I don't think we would be drinking Smaragd. Usually it's a little bit more expensive for the price that we're getting. And so a Federspiel is a correct kind of perspective. These weekly tastings attract more Gruner. That's probably true. Yeah. Gruner lovers, wine drinkers, people who enjoy wine and enjoy acidity and enjoy some complexity in their wine, venture eventually away from the typical wines that you'd find in most places, the ubiquitous wines. And one of those stops on the train or off the beaten path, if you will, is Austria and Gruner Veltliner. So yeah, that's very true. It's 29:40 in our tasting, and this is the time where we start to kind of weed through what we're at and start to pick. And Rick, you took the foil off due to carpal tunnel. A quick and inadvertent glance. Yeah. Don't talk anymore, Rick. You can't tell us anything, right? And thank you for recusing yourself. You're no longer an unbiased judge. But you could clap loudly in the background if we're getting something close, right? So Hungarian Gruner, it has to be a twist per Julie and Tony. That would be crazy. But and Karen Yadismark is referring to the Emerald. Yeah, you're right. Federspiel from Wachau. Yeah, I think that's where I'm comfortable going too. So if I'm going to rule out Pinot Blanc, it's because there's a little bit more of a savory quality now that's in this. There's usually like a lemon, bright lemon curd quality in Pinot Blanc that is interesting. We had Pinot Gris initially too from Alsace. And that Gris, I think we would have seen a little bit more grayish cast on the wine potentially. I'm not quite picking that up. So I think I'm taking the train back to Austria and going Gruner Veltliner from the Wachau. Yeah, it's got some density. So yeah, Federspiel Gruner Veltliner 2018 would be great. And Isabel, yes, this is not an IPA, although I would bet this wine would be appealing to IPA drinkers. So yeah, any other final thoughts before we kind of do the grand reveal? Candy's on the bandwagon. Tony's in the hot seat next week. So yeah, we have some definite things to talk about before we wrap up. But Slumbergs are on Gruner. You were on Gruner early on, so yeah, you're not swaying from that, which is good. Oh, it's here. It's a tall, long, slender bottle. Like so, yeah, the bottle shape, right? This can be potentially Alsace. This could be some Northern Italian wines. It can absolutely be Austria. And that tells you it's 100% Austria. So we are in great shape with what we were getting to. The wine here is Steininger. It's a Kamptal Reserve. So it isn't from the Wachau. It's Gruner Veltliner. So it wouldn't have a Federspiel classification, but it's downright delicious. 2018 is right. So Kathy gets Gruner Veltliner from Austria. Almost the vintage. You're a few points off this week, but no big deal. You've got a lot of points running. But everybody else, really, we got here thanks to everybody's work. So remember, Gruner Veltliner wasn't terribly expressive. Pinot Gris, great call off the bat. Gruner Veltliner, another great call off the bat, because they are not terribly expressive. Sometimes Albarino can be in that camp too, where you just don't quite get a sense of things. You start to think, I should think about Gruner Veltliner, I should think about Pinot Gris, or Grigio, and I should think about maybe Albarino. Because we had a little pear notes, we should have touched on Albarino, but more lime perhaps. So those three grapes kind of run in the range. And then for Gruner, white pepper element that's noted early on, and some of that radishy note that came on. It took a while for me to get to that, maybe because of the chill. It was the second kind of pour out of the decanter that really helped me to get to that profile that helped me beyond the descriptors that you all threw out. So we rocked that. That's great. And Chris, you're right. Central Coast is making some cool Gruners. Looking forward to next week. Tony is going to sit in the hot seat. I've picked out a wine for him, and he is going to be tasting with you, which will be really exciting. So I'll be on the chat, hopefully, with you guys, just kind of looking along and not trying to create any havoc. But Barry, if your offer of the 47 Cheval Blanc is there, I'm going to find a way to make sure I get that. The next week after that, so July 2nd, we're taking a break, and everybody here at Field & Main is going to take a couple of days off, more than a couple, a little bit over a week, and close things down for a minute. And we're going to be closed essentially July 1 through July 21st, although we will come back the 9th of July to continue with these blind tastings. And so if you're interested in playing along with some of those wines, come and visit us this next week from now until we close at the end of June and pick up the wines. We have all the wines through July, so if you wish, you can come in and pick up a 4-pack or a 3-pack or whatever else so that we can continue to play together, because it's been a lot of fun. And we'll have all those wines available for you. If you want more of this, we have some more of this available too. And Chris, to your question about when it's Julie's turn, she just laughed off camera going, I think we will put her in the hot seat too at some point. Maybe we'll do a collective of Tony, myself, and Julie. We'll have someone else pick it. So that's coming forward. So we're going to close for 3 weeks as we retool the restaurant in anticipation for opening it on July 22nd. And as we open it, we will be opened in a metered fashion, whatever phase we're in, for indoor, and we will have, of course, outdoor seating. We will also have our to-go operation, so you can still take things to go. We'll also still have our heat and eat options for a couple of different options. And right this week, if you're interested, we have some baby back ribs with Joffrey's baked beans and some coleslaw and a barbecue sauce. We also have a really kind of unctuous, delicious, which would be great with this wine, chicken dish with a mushroom broth, and mushroom broth that's made thanks to some turnips that have been cooked with miso and butter, and then that miso butter is added back to the mushroom broth to give you umami and this fantastic texture that would be just spectacular with this. So the profile this week really matches this one. Isabel, yeah, if you already bought the 7-2 wine, we bumped that wine. I think 9 of you bought the July 2nd wine. That is now the July 9th wine. So hang on to that. We caught that as we decided to close. 9 of you had already purchased it. So yes, the 7-2 becomes the 7-9. For most of you, you'll buy the 7-9 wine, and that's correct. We changed the labels to reflect that. And Chris will miss you too. But we're, a little bit of distance makes the heart grow fonder. And there's been a lot of distance in this period of time. And our heart is pretty fond at this point and looking forward to having all of you come back and visit us at the restaurant. But I have to say, one guest this week talked about this experience and said, you're building a community. We are forming a community in a space where we're not actually physically present, which is remarkable and has been, as I've said each week, just a true delight. It's something I look forward to each and every week, and spending time with you and watching this group develop their palate and throw out things like, what about Vernaccia? Yeah, absolutely. That's not something we had the first week. And so having that now is awesome. And we wish to continue that. So to all of you, whether we get to see you in the next coming weeks or not, I wish you well. Cheers. I will see you then back here on July 9th. And until then, drink well. Cheers.